let's read a scary stalker story I found on Reddit. A few years ago, my anxiety was high. I was already at a point in my life where I thought I was a little out of it, but that was amplified by a lot when I kept repeatedly hearing noises outside of my window, like every single night. It just wouldn't stop. I would finally get so freaked out I'd go wake up my parents and get them to look outside, but they never found anything. I started to think I was crazy or just subconsciously seeking attention. One morning, my grandfather discovered one of our lawn chairs beneath our bathroom window. It's pretty high up and the bottom pane is fogged, so I'm not sure the chair even helped, but it was left there regardless. The next night, heard sounds again. Nothing. The night after, however, we checked outside and discovered something that made my stomach churn. A small stepladder was sitting directly outside of my window, back just enough to allow someone to sit on it but still see. On my windowsill was a bag of now cold McDonald's, which is just up the street from me. Most of the food was still in there, but still, some fucker had just been watching me doing absolutely nothing of interest in my room without me knowing for I don't know how long. The cops were called, nothing happened. I felt crazier than ever. No one was to be found, but at least we had some evidence that someone that shouldn't be hovering around our house was at my window, watching intently through the blinds in a space between the two chairs. Heard noises the next night, ran outside, nothing. Earlier in the night, I had sewn my curtains together, which hopefully made it harder to see in. Apparently it did, because now the fucker had taken to climbing on top of our air conditioning unit, and from there, climbing onto our garbage can, then standing on that so he could hopefully see above where the drapes went. The handprints and shoe prints were left on the lid to prove it. I should also mention that there were now holes in my screen, and I heard those holes be created. He took a stick and sharpened it somehow. We found it outside of my window, and was trying to stealthily break away the screen bit by bit. The hole is still there. The next night, I distinctly heard the gravel near my window crunch. There was simply no mistaking my sound. As stealthily as I could, I let out a small moan he surely heard and rolled over just out of view as if I were sleeping, then pressed myself against a wall out of view of the window, very quietly opened my door and crept down the hall. My heart was pounding. Normally I knock on my parents' door, but I knew the slightest sound would make the bastard bolt, so I quietly opened the door and snuck in, then informed them that there was, without a single doubt, someone outside my window. They didn't mind the intrusion and got up, got dressed, formulated a plan, and crept to the back door. I ran to the bathroom to stand on the edge of our tub and peek out the window just as the back door was thrown open and my parents ran outside like morons. And sure enough, they saw him. They started screaming as the man leapt off the garbage can and bolted down our driveway, which is what I was looking at. They screamed all sorts of horrible things at the top of their lungs. He ended up escaping across the street, hiding behind a house adjacent to us. The balls on this bastard. He kept peeking out at us as we all stood outside, but we wanted to leave him there so the cops could finally nab him. They were called, they came, and they searched, but they never found him. Bastard must have hopped a fence or something. Still to this day I hear sounds outside my window, even in the dead of winter, but he's never out there. He might have just been a peeper, but he targeted me specifically for months until he was almost caught. What really pisses me off is that once he lost interest in me because it was too unsafe, he moved onto a house down the street with 2 little girls. He actually managed to get in through their window, and their dad caught him just standing in the middle of the room watching them sleep. I still don't think he was caught even then. All I know is that it could have been way worse, but it messed me up. I trust the men in my neighborhood even less now. The men around here stare very blatantly. I've been chased home by one. I've had a guy try to jerk me into his car while I was passing him, telling him no, I didn't need a ride, and to leave me alone. All these years later, I still hear shit outside my window and freak out. I turn out my lights entirely to exercise. I do my best to avoid the windows when I undress. It just scarred me. That is horrible that he has not been caught. Men.
For years, I thought I had imagined what I had seen on that back road in Alabama, until I learned people called it the dog man. Scary story time. So to preface this, I have always been a little spiritually inclined. I grew up in the southern foothills, and ever since I was young, I've had many encounters with different entities. For years, I thought this was just another one of those weird incidences that I would never be able to explain. Last night, I started a really interesting book that detailed the folkways and lores of southern Appalachia. I was almost finished reading when some of the words caught my eye. She began to talk about the many cryptids known to the region, and that's the first time I had read the words Dogman. I knew immediately just from the name that she was referencing the same creature I had seen several years ago. I was probably 17 at the time, and just like most kids, once I got my own car, I typically stayed out well past dark. We lived in a small community about 10 miles from the nearest town. My mom would tell me not to be out past midnight if I could help it, but if I knew she was tucked in bed, I didn't really feel the need to rush home. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary that night. I drove to town, got me a little midnight snack, and listened to my music in the parking lot while I ate, and then started heading back home. Once you left town and went over the train tracks, it turned into a country road. That road was lined with forests for miles, save for a few little side roads that led to houses tucked back behind the woods. At one point, the trees had been cleared from a half-mile stretch, and I would sometimes pull off to the side of the road to look at the stars there. I didn't pull over that night, but I did slow down to be able to admire the night sky while I drove past. As the road curved, something caught my eye standing behind a section of tall grass a little further up between the field and the road. My first thought was that someone's car broke down. It had happened to me several times on that road, but when I rounded the bend, I didn't see any car. I didn't slow down any more than I had been. I was going maybe 30 miles an hour. I saw what I thought was a tall, broad guy wearing a heather gray hoodie. Then I noticed the gray covered its hands and the dark claws that were resting by its side. Of course, my heart kind of dropped. I took in its posture, the slight hunch of its back, and how still it was standing. That's when I finally let myself look at its face, and I genuinely saw what I thought was a coyote's face, not just staring back at me, but watching me drive past him. As soon as my mind registered what I was looking at, I turned back to the road and stepped on the gas, shouting obscenities because WTF. I glanced back in my rearview mirror to see if he was still there, and I didn't see him. But that didn't stop me from speeding the rest of the way home. I got the car parked as quickly as I possibly could and rushed up the stairs, running through the house to my mom's room. I startled her up and told her everything I saw, all about this coyote creature standing on its back legs. At the time, I wasn't very knowledgeable of cryptids. I have heard of skinwalkers before. That was the only way I could think to explain it. And of course, that terrified me. I've heard of stories of those, and I actually started crying when I thought of that possibility. I had never heard of anyone seeing one that vividly, and I genuinely thought I was doomed. Of course, I was terrified to drive for a long time after that. I refused to go outside at night for months, and I still get nervous anytime I have to travel on a back road at night. I'm not sure if I find it comforting, but I'm glad I have an idea of what it was now. I still have more to read about them now that I know that I'm not the only one who has seen them. But this is the story I have, and to this day, it's one of the most vivid encounters I have ever had. And that's the end of the story. So the story was found on the Dogman subreddit, and I actually wanted to read a comment that someone left on this story to give a little more insight, and they gave a little more knowledge about the Dogman. So this commenter goes on to say, "Thanks for your encounter. It helps add to the general knowledge about these creatures that more people need to know. There are many accounts of these creatures along the roadways, sometimes seen eating roadkill. They have been known to run in front of cars, startling the driver. I believe they do this in hopes of causing an accident. Encounters happen along hiking trails, waterways. Hunters see them. Most all encounters are at night and seem more and more prevalent. They come right up into people's yards looking for food. They can make sounds like people, a woman screaming out in the woods, a baby crying in the woods, a relative calling for help. They bump into the sides of houses, jump on the roof, walk around, and stare in windows. I don't believe they are from here," talking about Earth. "They have been seen associated with portals, which is definitely not part of any known way of travel. This may explain why you can't just go out and hunt them down or capture one. They don't live here in our trees or our caves. True trail cam footage is hard to come by. For now, all we can do is make ourselves aware and use defense. Bear spray, possibly. super bright flashlights to blind, and of course, weapons of some type. Then OP responds to this commenter by saying, "I'm so serious, I didn't include this part because I thought it was unrelated, but I actually accused an ex of mine, probably 2 years after I saw it, of knocking on my house and tapping on my window. I even reached out to his parents and they vouched for him and said he wasn't doing it. I heard screaming from across my house for about a month after seeing it, which is what made me so fearful that it was a skinwalker." Yeah, so I wanted to include that comment because I found it very interesting, because normally with stories like that, with cryptids, Sasquatch, the Dogman, the Mothman, we associate, or for me personally speaking, I've always associated them being earthly beings or like earthly things. It's never once crossed my mind of those creatures being not of Earth. But I feel like, that could be a possibility, because it's something that we can't explain. There are things of legend, of story, of myth, things like that. And they could be, I've always associated them being like old spirits, or like creatures that are maybe older than civilization, or just something that has always existed but it has hidden away from humanity, or things like that. I've never thought of something like the Dogman being not of Earth. Just again, because I feel like a lot of these stories, especially cryptids like within the US, tend to have a lot of background, or like origins of Native Americans, or they have more of that history or stories of those types of creatures. And so because of that, I've always associated being earthly, from Earth. Like I said, maybe just ancient beings, or something that's just always existed in our plane. But to think that it's outside of our plane, or outside of Earth from somewhere else, whether it be our physical dimension, like the third dimension, just from outer space, or a different dimension. I don't know, they did mention a portal. So, but me personally, like I said, I never put it together that, hey, maybe these creatures aren't from Earth. But I feel like it's such a dumb thing. Like, how could I not have put that together and think of, oh, maybe they're not of Earth? But I don't know, I just thought that was an interesting concept, because like I said, mainly when I personally have heard those stories, they come from Native American legend, which again, they're earthly legends. So I've always thought they were from Earth. But I don't know, that kind of adds an interesting spin. And, unfortunately for OP, they kind of experience those things that, the commenter mentioned about them making noise that sound like humans, and like knocking against the houses and things like that. I don't know, it's very interesting. And I'm really enjoying reading these stories of legend. Like, I always had like a general knowledge of Sasquatch, and like these things that you would hear, that I would watch like on YouTube, on like scary stories, and like, like interesting legends and stuff like that. But I don't know, like just kind of like reading these stories, there's more to it. There's definitely more to it. I grew up out in the country most of my life. Well, not most now, I'm older, but I lived out in the country for 10 years. And the scariest thing, I never experienced anything, but the scariest thing that would scare me living out in the country is being attacked by a fictional creature called a gravoid. If you remember that movie, let me know. It's kind of old, and I feel like it's kind of niche. But there was this old movie called, well, it's older now, called Tremors. And it basically, like, the first Tremor movie was about like this creature that, think of like just a huge worm that lived under the ground. And I think the storyline goes is that it was like an old, like, dinosaur worm type thing. But the way they would come after people is that they would hear the vibrations of people walking on the ground. And so whenever they would hear walking, whether it's an animal or a person, they would come up from under the ground and like eat them. And this took place in the desert in Nevada, the storyline. And so where I grew up in the country, it was all sand, it wasn't dirt. So I remember I would walk like a quarter of a mile to my friend's house, and the sun would go down, it'd be late at night, it'd be a school night, and I'm like rushing home, my heart is pounding, because I'm like, oh my god, a graboid's that's what they're called, graboids. They're gonna come, it's gonna get me. Oh my god, I was so petrified of that. But anyways, this video is, I'm rambling too much, it's gone too far. But anyways, so what do you think? Do you think there something to it? Do you think these cryptids are possibly not of this earth, or like aliens to a degree? Have you ever experienced anything spooky or scary on your way home from anywhere? I don't know. Let me know. What do you think?
This is one of the scariest stories I've ever read. It was posted 10 years ago on Reddit by an account called A Writer Named Williams. It was on the subreddit called Let's Not Meet. The story is called Poker Face. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this very scary story. This happened in Antioch, California. It was around 2 a.m. I was at a friend's house, safe and warm, sheltered suburbia. We were having a lot to drink, chit-chatting, enjoying ourselves, of course. When you're having fun, time hits the fast-forward button, and those few minutes turn into an hour. I had too much to drink. My friend has a bit of an abrupt bedtime, so I had to dodge out early, still intoxicated. I felt too shameful thinking I'd be asking too much to stay in his house to sleep off the drunkenness. I suppose he was either too rude or too drunk to consider it himself. Whatever. Sometimes a little inconvenience makes you appreciate everything else. I needed about another hour or so to sober up and drive back. As fast as time passed during my stay, it decided to drastically slow down as soon as I stepped out of his house. It was a cul-de-sac area, a concrete jungle with the stem of the street breaking into a fork. Alongside the road, my car was parked. The only street light that worked was in the middle of the cul-de-sac circle, about 80 yards away. I stumbled towards my car, produced my keys, and felt the metal line up. Opened my door and shifted to the back seat. Because this was a dark, strange, and unfamiliar neighborhood, I took the leftover newspapers and a sweater in my back seat to cover myself up. I was a little scared. I wanted to camouflage myself and not just be some guy awkwardly sitting in his car, waiting for time to pass in order to drive home. I couldn't fall asleep. The uncomfortable feeling of a cheap backseat bed enshrouded in darkness didn't make the chance of slumber easier. It felt too ominous, and of course my mind began to wonder. I thought of worst-case scenarios, like how the police would shine their lights on me through the window, or a drunk driver hitting my car, and... Wait. In the distance, about 100 yards away, I hear footsteps approaching. The gravel scuffed with each step forward, growing in proximity but periodically taking stops. I wondered why until it made sense in my mind. Whoever it was probably looking through cars carefully, with the intent to steal one. I couldn't recall how many cars were on the block, but I counted 3 full stops until he was at my window, breathing. I froze. There was no more than 1 foot between us. The car encapsulated me as I lay hidden beneath backseat clutter, forming myself into an object, trying my hardest to be unnoticeable, unmoving, and simply not there. "I see you," said a 40-plus-year-old man in a perverse baby talk. I imagine when you were playing hide and seek and one of your friends tricks you into coming out, he said it in that tone of voice, as if baiting me, like he was questioning whether the clutter in the back seat was just clutter or a person. I didn't want to move or check the window. I remained clutter. Give me an Academy Award. My body reacted by minimizing my breathing so much that I felt paralyzed. I dare not to look. My eyes fixated on the back of the passenger seat. I didn't blink, I didn't move, I didn't breathe. My heart was pounding so hard it shook my body with each throb. He circled around the car. My ears didn't fail me. I heard the steps. I felt like I was part of the car. I could feel him touching the trunk as he carefully pressed down on it, as if to test the alarm, as if to test me. I was in the middle of fight or flight. I couldn't do either without elevating danger. I was frozen and hoping to God he was bluffing. He circled the car again. The door handle to my right jiggled. He was pulling it multiple times. "I see you." Same tone, but more agitated and stressed, more convinced that he was trying to make that clutter move, revealing itself to be one of his expectations that it was me. My muscles tensed like a cow before slaughter. That had to be metal against glass. "Take a penny right now and tap your window." A crowbar, a knife, a rock, a gun. My eyes fixated on the seat in front of me, never averting my gaze like he was. I was covered enough to where I couldn't see beyond the seat in front of me. I know I couldn't see him, but I can feel his eyes resting on top of me.
My name is Poker Face. What's your name?
The voice changed in a lower, demented, and serious tone. My mind forced a visual. It wasn't anything human. I already accepted my death. I was ready to be shot in the head, ready to take a life-changing bullet, multiple knife wounds, just make the sleep bearable, not excruciating, as you drained me of life. I wouldn't know how to react. My thoughts grew dimmer. I imagined my friend waking up the next morning after a calm night of safe and sound sleep, only to discover my mutilated, defiled, and bloody body hanging outside of my car door. It was then I heard nothing but my own heart. What was this person doing now? Just staring at me in the middle of the night, talking to me, or a messy pile in the back seat? Time froze. The footsteps were being swallowed in the distance. Thank God he left. I waited another hour until the sun showed hints of itself. I jumped in my front seat and bolted out of there, wide-eyed and sober. And that's the end of the story.
If you're new here, I'm Krista, and on my account we talk about weird events, paranormal story times, and everything in between. So if you're interested in that genre of content, be sure to check my account out. This one's called I Had a Strange Encounter with Some Kind of Entity in the Appalachians. In February of this year, I went to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee with my family, and we stayed in this adorable little cabin on a golf course. Anyway, my parents, Nana, aunt and her daughter, my brother, his girlfriend, and his dad all went out to explore the woods and riding trails, and me, my sister, and my cousin all stayed at the cabin. About 30 minutes after they left, the three of us were playing Cards Against Humanity and laughing and joking about the cards we kept getting when we hear a knock at the front door. Now, it's important to note that we were all sitting in the dining room. The dining room had about 8 to 10 windows around the room, one of which was pointed directly at the door. The door is angled towards the dining room. When the knock had happened, I had actually just gotten up to check on some cookies I had in the oven, so I was at a point where I couldn't see the door, but they could. My sister was staring at the door, and my cousin was looking at me with such an unexplainable expression that kind of creeped me out, but I still set my mitts down and went to walk to the door. But about halfway there, my sister called me from the back door. Mind you, I can still see my sister at the dining room table, and whatever it was called me by my legal government first name, and my sister has not called me by my legal name since she was in the 3rd grade. When that happened, I was on high alert and realized I probably shouldn't open the door because, duh. So I just went and sat down and chose to ignore it. Oh my God. Now, the night before, I had called my older cousin to debrief about a situation with my ex. During this call, I was sitting in the metal glider on the porch where the hot tub is because it felt like I was suffocating inside. As I'm sitting there, I noticed that on the golf cart bridge down the hill from me, something is standing there, looking directly at me. Now, at the time, I chalked it up to being a man standing there because that's not unusual for me. But as I'm finishing up my conversation with my cousin, I get this overwhelming sense of dread and danger, and I can't tell where it's coming from. So I quietly got up and went inside and watched a movie. Funny enough, the day after the events of the first paragraph unfolded, which the first paragraph was all about the dining room and hearing someone that sounded like their sister, we went to an exotic car exhibit and an aquarium. Now, all was good there, nothing strange, but when we were driving through the mountains to get back to the cabin, that feeling of dread came back. It was so overwhelming, I was in physical pain from how heavy my chest felt. About 5 minutes into the unbearable pain and sense of dread driving me nuts, it stopped. It just went away.
This Reddit user claims that after 3 years of hearing noises from inside his kitchen, they finally captured a photo of what's been haunting his apartment with a night vision camera. A tall figure standing, so clear that most people thought it could be an actual person, squatting inside their apartment. To further investigate this claim, the user recorded a video in night mode in the same area, and they captured this unsettling sight. If you look closely, the figure seems to be moving erratically, almost as if they're paranoid of being caught. Some people thought it was Dave Grohl. Some said Keanu Reeves. Hell, some even said Jesus. To make this even more eerie, according to the poster, their girlfriend was in an adjacent room watching television while this video was being recorded. Additionally, the room that is directly behind the figure in the video is the pantry. However, according to the user, there is no crawl space that is big enough for a person to fit through if it were to be a squatter. Whether it could be a hoax, I guess I'll leave that up for you to decide.
My stalker True story. So I'm your average 21-year-old girl who in her spare time likes to go on dating apps. I found a knockoff dating app that's kind of like Tinder, but it's for guys that like curvy women. So off the bat, I found a couple of nice guys to chat with. The next day, I get a message that changed everything. Usually my type is guys my age, but he was older, like in his 40s older. We weren't even 8 chat bubbles in until he said, "I can tell that you'd be a wonderful mother." I took it as a compliment at first. That wasn't the creepiest thing I've heard a guy say to me. Honestly, I should have stopped talking to him, but I was bored, and the rest of my chats ghosted me, so I just stuck with this conversation. He told me how he lives in the next town over from my small town, so he was actually really close to me. He was a single dad, so that "you'll be a wonderful mother" compliment meant something different now, in a creepy way. He was a bartender at 2 bars, one in his town, and he worked at another bar in my town. At the bar in my town where he did weekend shifts, he was only 5 minutes away, which kind of unnerved me because I didn't want to see him in real life. A week later, he started getting really clingy, sending me good morning texts with 4 emojis following it. I didn't want to be mean, so I kept it short and simple and said hi back. Then he said, "Listen, I'm going to the beach this weekend in my Jeep. I'd love for you to come so I can make you happy for a day. Plus, I'd like to get a peek of that curvy body that you claim to have." I said I was busy with work stuff and that I couldn't go. He just dismissed it and said he'd miss me. I did feel like going to the beach though that day, so I went to a local spot that was past his town by a few miles. I was there for about an hour and I was tanning on my stomach, but then I heard someone walking up to me. Looking up, I saw a beefy-looking guy who looked to be late 30s. He smiled at me in a weird way, which freaked me out, and before I could ask what his deal was, he said, "So this is work stuff?" My heart stopped for a second. It couldn't be him. I never saw his face before, but who else would know what I said in my text messages? This was the beach I was going to. What a coincidence, huh? He smirked. I just nodded and started to gather my things. Yeah, it really is a coincidence. When I stood up, he took a long stride forward so that he stood in front of me, leaving little space between us. "Hey, looks like you're changed to go swimming. Shall we go into the water?" He smirked again. I was getting really nervous. I said no and went to my car quickly and drove off. I saw him standing on the grass beside the road, waving at me with a smile. What a freaking psycho. Another week passed and I kept my communication with him short. During that week, I had odd run-ins with him. First at Walmart. I could understand this because he lives in a house behind Walmart, but still, it was weird. Then I went to a bar that was a couple minutes from my house. I was with my friend and we took some pictures together. I put them on Instagram. 30 minutes later, he came in with his work attire on. He sat down next to me while my friend was on the other side. "Oh, you come here too?" I look at him oddly and say, "I come here every Friday with my friend. I've never seen you here before. Why are you here?" "Just passing by and saw your car and thought I'd say hi." "Also, what are you drinking? I can buy you another." My friend grabs money and I know she's telling me to get the freak out of here. I just say no thanks and quickly pay for my drinks. He got up too and followed us outside. "You can't drive, you've been drinking. Let me take you home. I can take care of you." I was scared. His tone of voice sounded so desperate. I said no and walked to my car and drove home, also making sure I wasn't being followed. The next day I got a text early in the morning from him. "Hey baby, I was so worried about you last night. I did some digging on my laptop and found your address. You need to be more careful with your privacy, sweetie." I called him on his bluff saying he didn't have my address, but in the next few seconds there it was. My full address, and even more information like the names of my parents, my full name, and all of our birthdays. I was terrified. "I can come over and comfort you now. I want to show you how much I love you, and I'll make you fall for me too." I didn't know what to do. At the moment I was alone and I had to think fast. The neighbor across the street from me was an ex-cop, so I quickly gathered my keys and phone and ran to his house praying he'd be home. I saw his truck in the driveway and I felt so relieved. I saw him in the garage. I ran over telling him I needed help. He listened to my story and had a look of concern the whole time. He told me to come inside and look out the window for his Jeep to go down my driveway. If it was him and he turned into my driveway, my neighbor would call the police. It was about 20 minutes, but I heard a loud noise coming down the road, and there he was in his Jeep. Turned right and slowed down, I guess to find the house. He saw my address and quickly pulled in. My neighbor grabbed the phone and started talking to the police directly instead of the operator. I got a text on my phone from him saying, "I'm at your door, so this is where you hide." I feel sick. I'm just waiting for the police to come barreling down my road to get him. Think he realized I'm not answering the door, so he got back in his Jeep to leave. But the timing couldn't be more perfect because 2 police cars came around the corner and blocked off my driveway so he couldn't go anywhere. I went outside and saw him in handcuffs. He saw me too, and he honestly looked heartbroken. I didn't feel bad though. What he did was crazy. There wasn't enough evidence to put him in jail for too long, but I did get a restraining order, which is working well so far. So that was Thirsty Thursdays, and that is truly the most terrifying stories, or the true ones like that. because people are truly the most terrifying things that we encounter. But anyways, if you have a creepy story, go ahead and submit it to the email in my bio. You can stay anonymous if you'd like, and we do everything over here. Crazy, creepy, spooky, scary, unbelievable, twisted, wild, does not matter. We read follower stories on Fridays for now. If you like that kind of content, go ahead and give me a follow. I try to post every day. See y'all tomorrow. Hope y'all enjoyed, and I hope you have a good night.
This is one of the scariest stories I've ever heard. A woman on Reddit shared her experience as a recent divorcee that was starting over. She started renting a new apartment and was really excited for a clean slate. Her new place was really nice. It was one of those types of complexes that even has a doorman, so she felt really safe there. At the time of her story, she'd been dedicating a lot of time to her job and would work late most nights, get home in the early morning hours just to get a few hours of sleep and have to wake up and do it all over again. She would wake up in the morning to start getting ready for work and realize that she had been so tired and out of it that she kept leaving the door unlocked. And then she started to notice that things inside of her apartment would seemingly go missing. At first, it was just small things like nail polish, her hairbrush, things that at first she was certain she had just been misplacing. But then it turned into more personal things like pictures, shaving razors, and most disturbingly, her underwear. This started to make her feel really on edge. So she started to make sure that she was being more intentional about locking her door at night. She would get in the habit of doing it every single night before going to sleep and then would repeat over and over again out loud that she had locked the door. But morning after morning, she would still wake up to find her door unlocked, and she couldn't understand how this kept happening. So she decided to invest in a camera. One night after returning home from work, she set the new camera up and hid it underneath a pile of towels on the floor. She made sure to lock the door and then she went to bed. When she woke up the next morning, everything in the apartment looked normal and nothing seemed to be missing, but the door had somehow been unlocked. So she decided to check the footage from her new camera. She had to fast forward through hours of footage but couldn't find anything. Right when she was about to give up, she noticed the door handle jiggle and then the door slowly crept open. A figure slid through the open door and walked toward the camera. The woman got so scared that she immediately paused the footage and called police. While she was on the phone with 911, she studied the figure on the camera footage and knew without a doubt that it was her apartment's maintenance man. She played the tape a little bit more and could see him walking around her apartment comfortably as if he were in his own home. Then she watched as he turned to walk toward her bedroom just out of view of the camera. The police arrived at her doorstep and she showed them this tape. The officers assured her that they would catch this guy, and she was so exhausted from this entire ordeal that after the police officers had finished their report, she went to lay in bed and take a nap. As she laid there, she was completely drained but still unable to fall asleep. That's when a chilling realization began to wash over her. When she watched that tape, she saw the man enter her home, but she never saw him leave. She sat up in bed and quickly looked around the room. She didn't see anybody, but she kept her attention focused on her bedroom door. In a rush to get to safety, she swung her legs over the side of her bed. Her feet hit the cold wood floor, and then she felt warm breath on her ankles. She raced out of her room as quickly as she could and caught the police officers just as they were leaving. When they went inside of her apartment, they found her maintenance man hiding under her bed, clutching a knife and a Polaroid camera.
Let's read another scary Reddit story. When I worked for a security company, I used to have to do nightly rounds in an old, dilapidated building, which used to be a newspaper printing press and journalist offices. Usually I would do these rounds around 3 or 4 a.m. The building was 5 stories, and on each level, there were small metal cylinders attached to walls and doorways, which necessitated the usage of a deggy stick, which I'd press onto the points, which registered to the main office to prove I was doing all 5 floors end to end. Some of the building was lit, as during the day, workers would be inside servicing the electric panels or tearing apart floors. When I did these rounds, nobody but me would be in the building. It had a cold chill inside at the time from the winter air. Walking through a large, abandoned building in dead silence, I admit was somewhat creepy. The smell was old and stale. Sometimes I'd hear strange noises, but nothing too serious. I felt generally comfortable in the building except on one floor, floor 3. One end of the floor was lit by an overhead light around the staircase, but the other end, which stretched a good 10 or 15 yards, was pitch black. Whenever I'd make my way down that hallway, which you could only go left, to another hallway, to which eventually led to an open room with short, segmented cubicle walls, previously an office floor, and on the other side, dark, opened bathrooms, which looked like something out of Silent Hill. I always felt uneasy, extremely uneasy. That feeling some get when they say it felt like I was being watched. Yeah, that was me. One night while making my way through the darkness of that floor, I felt something touch the back of my neck. I swatted at it, thinking maybe a spider had landed on me, but no, nothing there. I shone my flashlight everywhere and found nothing. The hair stood up on my neck, and I made a run for it. I looked back behind me, ignoring the final deggy point I had to hit, which involved me walking the full stretch of the hallway through a door to another creepy dark room, hitting my point and going back to the eerie hallway and finally back to the light. And I swear I saw a shadowy mass moving near those dreaded bathrooms. Later on that night, I went to evaluate a guard at another site who used to work in that building 4 years ago when it was functioning with employees. I started to tell him about that building. I said to him, "Yeah, I get weird vibes on," and he immediately interjected with, "the 3rd floor?" I was dumbfounded, and my creep meter shot so high it broke the glass. I asked him what he meant by that before revealing my story. He told me that a woman had unalived herself on that floor. Her husband had left her, and she got up from her desk, walked to the window, and leapt out, landing like a splattered pancake in the parking lot. Not long after, the women on that floor refused to stay past 4 o'clock, and they all avoided the bathrooms. They made claims of hearing voices and seeing shadows out of their peripherals, among other things. He used to do the rounds in that building during working hours, but one night he stayed late and did rounds after dark when everyone had left. He felt the same vibes, and he also claimed that on one night he shined a flashlight down in the direction of the bathrooms, and he saw a tall, black figure, slightly hunched over, standing in the hallway, back towards him, peeking over its shoulder. He bolted out and never went on that floor again, or at least near the bathrooms. To give some detail on why the bathrooms were so eerie, they were both next to each other and doorless. When I would shine my light into the pitch darkness, I'd receive back the glare of mirrors with stains splashed all over them, creepy porcelain white sinks, a white tiled floor, and shadows bouncing off the walls. If you haven't played it, I'd recommend going on YouTube and watching a clip of the hallway bathroom scene from Outlast 2. The corridors and bathrooms are strikingly similar to what I'm describing here. Just those images alone will give you goosebumps. Now, I knew psychologically I'd be fucked having to do rounds at this building, but I couldn't avoid it. Our company was contracted to have a guard walk the grounds twice a day. I got stuck with the night rounds. So you can imagine my next visit I was not looking forward to. It went on for several days with nothing eventful occurring. However, that feeling of dread wouldn't subside, only strengthen. Finally, one night, I worked up the courage and said out loud, "If anyone is in here, make your presence known now. Stop fucking with me." Nothing. I continued down the dark hallway, through the door, into that dark room at the end. Flashlight in hand, hit my point, and re-entered the hallway, passing the bathrooms and going to turn right into the dark, open cubicle area. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted rapidly, and I froze. I can't explain it, but I got this sinking feeling in me that something was right behind me. Now, I know that typically, when people give their accounts of seeing ghosts or demons, it's usually just tricks of the light or their own minds seeing something that isn't really there. But mentally, they somehow contort reality to fit their skewed beliefs that they're seeing something which is not there. Well, I've had that happen to me before, and this was not one of those instances. I was completely awake, engaged, and lucid. Hell, I'd never even really believed in the paranormal or the demonic. I was never religious. Anytime I thought I saw a ghost or spirit, I was able to conjure up a reasonable explanation. Believe me, I've tried over and over to rationalize what I'm about to tell you, but I just can't. I was as much of a skeptic as any scientist on Earth. What I was about to confront was absolute, formed, and not by any means a trick of the light or peripheral movement. I started to walk faster, praying to reach the end of the darkness. My gut told me, don't turn around, don't turn around. But I had to. I couldn't wonder anymore. So I turned. I looked behind me, into the darkness. I shuddered immediately and jumped back. What I saw was a black, deep black figure, darker than the darkest corners of the floor by far, with frizzy hair, Tall, with arms much longer than a man's, and in the quickness of the situation, what looked like fingernails or claws. At first, I couldn't believe it. I thought maybe it was a tall homeless man or woman hiding in the building. I even called out, "Hello?" I was frozen in place, my heart about to punch a hole through my breastbone. This thing, still and silent, bent down, got on all fours, and started running at me full speed. And the way it was taking its strides in that split second were short, but very fast movements, like a crippled dog chasing the mailman. I turned and sprinted so fast towards the exit door that I fell forward, slamming myself into the door. I opened it to run out, but turned around one last time and shone my flashlight directly back where I had encountered this thing. There was a beam that ran from the floor to the ceiling with a breaker box attached to it, and the door to the box was flapping back and forth, making banging sounds each time it hit the beam. I watched until it stopped. Something had slapped it. After this, I still had to do rounds on this building. I had no choice. It was my job. But from then on, I wore headphones, putting music on full blast, and I'd sprint from end to end. Weeks later, I stopped in the darkness and called out for whatever it was to leave, that I refused to communicate with it any further. To this day, since this happened, I've not encountered anything I'd call paranormal, but that night, that thing, I'll never forget. It was real, it was full of hate, and I'm convinced it wanted to hurt me or kill me.
Scary story time about dating apps and dating in general. So 4 years ago, she moved to Indianapolis from wherever she was living to take care of her father, who was dying of terminal cancer. It's very sad time in her life. But soon after she moved there, he passed away. But she had signed a 1.5 year lease to save a little bit of money. So she just figured she was going to ride out the lease. She was working remote. It wasn't that big of a deal. And if she didn't like the city after her lease was up, she would just move. But she decided to pass the time. She was lonely, so she joined a dating app. In her email, Ellen described herself as pretty. She said she has a good personality. She has a good sense of humor. And she's really never had an issue like meeting men. But again, she had no friends in Indianapolis and no way to meet people. So she's excited when she matches with this guy named Matt. His name has also been changed, and they get to talking. Matt seems normal. He's good looking. They have great conversations. She tells him that she's there because her father just passed away and she's grieving. She's kind of going through it. But they have really, really good conversations, and she's excited to meet him. So they're talking on the app for a few weeks, and he finally says, "Do you want to go get some drinks?" And he suggests this bar. They agree that they're going to meet at 7 p.m. So she goes to the bar at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. comes and goes. Then it's 7:15. Then it's 7:20, and there's no sign of him. Now, mind you, they had been talking every single day. So she logs onto the app to message him, be like, "Hey, are you still coming?" And she sees that he has her blocked. She's like, okay, rude, especially because he gave her no explanation of why he ended up ghosting her. But she had done dating apps before. She knows that people are flaky. So she just decides she's going to make the best of the night, and she moves to the bar from her table and orders another drink. She's sitting there for a little while. These two guys walk in, they sit next to her, and she ends up like talking with them and the bartender. They're actually having a pretty good time for about an hour. One of the guys gets up to leave, and she's left with the guy that's sitting next to her. We're going to call him John. John was like, "You know what? I think I'm going to stay. I'll have another drink with you." He orders another round. He buys her a drink. She said John was not normally her type. It wouldn't be somebody that she would normally go for, but she was like vibing with him. And she said she doesn't know if it was the drinks or if it was the conversation or if it was just like the nature of the night, but they end up hanging out for a few hours at the bar. So finally she decides she's going to call it a night. She has to work in the morning, so she says bye to John, and he's like, "You know what? It was so nice getting to know you. I've really been going through it. My mother just passed away from cancer." And she just stops in her tracks and she's like, "Oh my God, like my dad just passed away from cancer." And so she sits back down and they end up talking and grieving together for like about another hour. Before she left, they end up exchanging numbers, and then they get to talking and they end up dating. Things were going well over the next year. She said they were grieving together, working through their issues together and separately, and it was just nice to have him around. Her lease was coming up. John suggests that they move in together. She's like, "Okay, you know what? Why not? It's going well." She said throughout their relationship, there were no real red flags. John was kind of a loner. He didn't really have a lot of friends. He didn't really have any family, but she was okay with that. He did travel for work, so he would leave some weekends, but he never gave her any like cheater vibes. John also didn't have any social media because he was kind of a private guy. They move in together, and he was self-employed, so sometimes he would take work phone calls and he would leave for a little while he was on the phone. One night while John was asleep, she wanted to watch something on Netflix in the living room, but when she logged onto the TV, she noticed that Netflix had been logged out. So she snuck in the bedroom, took his phone to see if she could reset the password because it was through his account. So she's swiping through the apps on his phone to find his email to like reset the password, and she notices he has Tinder. She said her stomach dropped because she would never have expected that he was like a cheater. But instead of waking him up, she opens the app because she wants to see what he's hiding, and he has a bunch of unread messages. was, and then she said she clicked on his profile to see what he had and like what he was advertising himself as, and she said she audibly gasped, like her jaw was on the floor, because the pictures that he was using were not of him. It was the original guy, the guy named Matt, who she tried to meet at the bar the night that she met John. John had literally catfished her. He had pretended to be somebody else, knew that she was going to be at the bar by herself, knew that she was going to get stood up, and then knew that he was going to...
What would you do if you moved into a new apartment and heard your neighbors arguing every night just to learn that no one has lived in the apartment next to yours for 2 years? This story was submitted to me by a guy named Tyler. I always heard yelling and banging in the apartment next to mine, but learned that no one had lived in that apartment for 2 years. This was my first apartment. I was finally on my own and ready to have my own place. The apartment was perfect. It was in a quiet neighborhood in my city. It was a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 900 square foot apartment. More than enough space for one person. The first couple nights I heard some banging from the apartment next to mine. It truly didn't bother me at first. I was a 20-year-old guy and I wasn't always quiet myself. Then as the weeks went on, it went from banging to screaming matches. These incidents all happened late at night, anywhere from 11 to 3 in the morning. Again, I didn't complain, but it was starting to disrupt my sleep, so I started getting really annoyed. Mind you, this would happen 3 or 4 nights a week. About a month later, I started seeing this girl. We had gone on a few dates at this point, and I had her come over to my apartment for dinner. She ended up staying the night, and around 2 a.m., the banging and screaming started. We both woke up from the commotion, and I apologized to her and told her my neighbors do this often. I explained everything. She asked me if I had said anything to them, and I said no, I've never gone over and said anything because I didn't feel like it was my place. She told me I needed to call my landlord and tell him what was going on. I told her I would call in the morning, and so I did. When he answered the phone, he asked what was wrong. I explained the whole situation to him, and he was silent for a minute. Then he spoke, and what he said made my blood run cold. He said no one has lived in that apartment for 2 years. I told him that people must be living in there. I wasn't crazy and explained my girlfriend had heard it too. He said he would be over in a couple hours and we would check it out together. A few hours passed by and then there was a knock at my door. I opened it and saw Victor, my landlord. I've only ever seen him once when he showed me the apartment and gave me the keys on the spot. We walked down the hall to the apartment next to mine and he knocked on the door. He then took out his keys and unlocked the door. He opened the door a crack and asked if anyone was in there. No response. When he opened the door completely, you could tell this place had not been lived in for a long time. The air was musty, and there was nothing besides a kitchen table in the whole apartment. I was taken back by this. I had told him there was no way, and he stopped me. He told me that the last tenants he had in this apartment had the cops there at least once a week for domestic disputes. It was a man and a woman in their early 30s, and one night, the man killed his girlfriend and then himself. The apartment has been vacant ever since. I was speechless. I was never someone to believe in the paranormal, but after that, I knew there were other things in this life you truly just cannot explain. I lived there for another 2 months, and 3 to 4 nights a week, I would hear the banging and screaming. Once my lease ended, I got a new apartment and moved out. That was my only ever paranormal experience. That situation is crazy. I don't know how he ended up finishing out his lease after that. Of course, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments. And if you have a story that you would like me to share, feel free to DM me.
My stalker. True story. So I'm your average 21-year-old girl who in her spare time likes to go on dating apps. I found a knockoff dating app that's kind of like Tinder, but it's for guys that like curvy women. So off the bat, I found a couple of nice guys to chat with. The next day, I get a message that changed everything. Usually my type is guys my age, but he was older, like in his 40s older. We weren't even 8 chat bubbles in until he said, "I can tell that you'd be a wonderful mother." I took it as a compliment at first. That wasn't the creepiest thing I've heard a guy say to me. Honestly, I should have stopped talking to him, but I was bored, and the rest of my chats ghosted me, so I just stuck with this conversation. He told me how he lives in the next town over from my small town, so he was actually really close to me. He was a single dad, so that "you'll be a wonderful mother" compliment meant something different now, in a creepy way. He was a bartender at 2 bars, one in his town, and he worked at another bar in my town. At the bar in my town where he did weekend shifts, he was only 5 minutes away, which kind of unnerved me because I didn't want to see him in real life. A week later, he started getting really clingy, sending me good morning texts with 4 emojis following it. I didn't want to be mean, so I kept it short and simple and said hi back. Then he said, "Listen, I'm going to the beach this weekend in my Jeep. I'd love for you to come so I can make you happy for a day. Plus, I'd like to get a peek of that curvy body that you claim to have." I said I was busy with work stuff and that I couldn't go. He just dismissed it and said he'd miss me. I did feel like going to the beach though that day, so I went to a local spot that was past his town by a few miles. I was there for about an hour and I was tanning on my stomach, but then I heard someone walking up to me. Looking up, I saw a beefy-looking guy who looked to be late 30s. He smiled at me in a weird way, which freaked me out, and before I could ask what his deal was, he said, "So this is work stuff?" My heart stopped for a second. It couldn't be him. I never saw his face before, but who else would know what I said in my text messages? This was the beach I was going to. What a coincidence, huh? He smirked. I just nodded and started to gather my things. Yeah, it really is a coincidence. When I stood up, he took a long stride forward so that he stood in front of me, leaving little space between us. "Hey, looks like you're changed to go swimming. Shall we go into the water?" He smirked again. I was getting really nervous. I said no and went to my car quickly and drove off. I saw him standing on the grass beside the road, waving at me with a smile. What a freaking psycho. Another week passed and I kept my communication with him short. During that week, I had odd run-ins with him. First at Walmart. I could understand this because he lives in a house behind Walmart, but still, it was weird. Then I went to a bar that was a couple minutes from my house. I was with my friend and we took some pictures together. I put them on Instagram. 30 minutes later, he came in with his work attire on. He sat down next to me while my friend was on the other side. "Oh, you come here too?" I look at him oddly and say, "I come here every Friday with my friend. I've never seen you here before. Why are you here?" "Just passing by and saw your car and thought I'd say hi. Also, what are you drinking? I can buy you another." My friend grabs money and I know she's telling me to get the freak out of here. I just say no thanks and quickly pay for my drinks. He got up too and followed us outside. "You can't drive, you've been drinking. Let me take you home. I can take care of you." I was scared. His tone of voice sounded so desperate. I said no and walked to my car and drove home, also making sure I wasn't being followed. The next day I got a text early in the morning from him. "Hey baby, I was so worried about you last night. I did some digging on my laptop and found your address. You need to be more careful with your privacy, sweetie." I called him on his bluff saying he didn't have my address, but in the next few seconds there it was. My full address, and even more information like the names of my parents, my full name, and all of our birthdays. I was terrified. "I can come over and comfort you now. I want to show you how much I love you, and I'll make you fall for me too." I didn't know what to do. At the moment I was alone and I had to think fast. The neighbor across the street from me was an ex-cop, so I quickly gathered my keys and phone and ran to his house praying he'd be home. I saw his truck in the driveway and I felt so relieved. I saw him in the garage. I ran over, telling him I needed help. He listened to my story and had a look of concern the whole time. He told me to come inside and look out the window for his Jeep to go down my driveway. If it was him and he turned into my driveway, my neighbor would call the police. It was about 20 minutes, but I heard a loud noise coming down the road, and there he was in his Jeep. Turned right and slowed down, I guess to find the house. He saw my address and quickly pulled in. My neighbor grabbed the phone and started talking to the police directly instead of the operator. I got a text on my phone from him saying, "I'm at your door, so this is where you hide." I feel sick. I'm just waiting for the police to come barreling down my road to get him. Think he realized I'm not answering the door, so he got back in his Jeep to leave. But the timing couldn't be more perfect because 2 police cars came around the corner and blocked off my driveway so he couldn't go anywhere. I went outside and saw him in handcuffs. He saw me too, and he honestly looked heartbroken. I didn't feel bad though. What he did was crazy. There wasn't enough evidence to put him in jail for too long, but I did get a restraining order, which is working well so far. So that was Thirsty Thursdays, and that is truly the most terrifying stories, or the true ones like that. because people are truly the most terrifying things that we encounter. But anyways, if you have a creepy story, go ahead and submit it to the email in my bio. You can stay anonymous if you'd like, and we do everything over here. Crazy, creepy, spooky, scary, unbelievable, twisted, wild, does not matter. We read follower stories on Fridays for now. If you like that kind of content, go ahead and give me a follow. I try to post every day. See y'all tomorrow. Hope y'all enjoyed, and I hope you have a good night.
Creepy things keep happening to me in the night, and it's just got 10 times worse. If you want to know what happened beforehand, please go watch my other story time. So, since posting that story time, the first thing that scared me is it wouldn't post. Okay, it had posted, but it refused to post so that people could actually see it, which creeped me out. Then every time everyone tried to watch it, it was laggy. Not as if you're early to the video, because that usually happens, but it was laggy throughout a lot of the video, even for me watching it, and it's my own content, and it never lags for me even if I'm watching it 15 seconds after I've posted it. Anyway, my friend came around on Thursday and we decided we were gonna have a drink, because why the fuck not, you know what I mean? I've not seen her in a while. It's been a long time since we were home alone, so why not? She's been coming here for years. She gets given birthday presents by the people that live here. She gets Christmas presents. That's how close of a friend she is. Thursday we drank, we went to bed, everything was fine. She was gonna stay over here, but she chose to stay over there because it was empty and it's better than sleeping on a couch. She decided to stay again another night. Instead, we just chilled out. We just spoke because we hadn't done it in a long time. We just chilled out, yeah? We then decided that she'd stay another night, considering it was the last night that she would be able to, and we decided we'd have a drink again because it's the last night she would be able to stay here and she'd be going home. And fuck knows when I'd see her again. We started off quite early, to be fair, and we didn't want to be up late, so we ended up cutting it quits and just going to bed. And that's when shit got scary. Beforehand, I was live on TikTok and a set of 2 glowing things was behind me in this car that I was in, through the window at the back, and it was a little creepy, but I could just pass that as a light from somebody else's land or anything like that. However, what happens next, for the life of me, I cannot explain. I'd been laying in bed on my phone for about 2 hours when I can hear her come over, and she's just walking around, she's talking, so I call her because I'm still awake. I'm like, hello, is there anything you need? Are you okay? She's like, yeah, I've just lost something. So I found it in my room, I gave it to her, she went back over. Then at 5:15 in the morning, I heard my front door open, I heard her walk through and talking to someone, not like she's talking to me, but she was talking on FaceTime. So I called her up and I was like, girl, where are you? She was like, I'm over there, I'm in bed. I was like, no, you're lying, because I can hear you right now. You're in my living room, I can hear you. She was like, no, I'm not, don't scare me, don't scare me. I'm like, I promise you I'm not fucking joking. I could hear my front door opening, I could hear her clear as day talking because my TV wasn't on. It wasn't like she was talking to me. Again, I said, it's like you're on FaceTime. She said, I am on FaceTime. I'm on FaceTime to this person, but I'm not over there with you. I'm over here by myself. And again, we were home alone. The only other person here was my boyfriend, who was peacefully asleep next to me. So I explained what was going on to her, and then she said, oh, maybe because my window's open you can hear me. So I turned the phone all the way down, took it off speaker and asked her to talk. I couldn't hear anything other than the birds chirping. So I hung up the phone, I left her to it, and I was like, right, okay, whatever it is, it's over here with me, you're safe, okay, it's me who's not. And like I say, whatever this is that's here, because I cannot explain this, it always mimics something I know. Heavy work boots. My boyfriend wears work boots, Timberland boots. Everyone that works here wears them. Stealing my teaspoons, that's because I only eat things that involve a spoon with a teaspoon. My front door opening and closing, it sounds like people are coming in from work, yet it's 4 a.m. Or not even that, it can be at 12 p.m. at night and no one's there. I hear cars driving down the driveway, which is impossible because of our big gates. Not to mention, out of nowhere after that night, them gates stopped working. The voices that I hear, the walking outside, it always sounds like somebody I know. And the people that I've seen my boyfriend's little sister when she's not there. I've seen an old man that looks so familiar to me, but I can't imagine where I've seen him from. It's just creepy. It's always something I know. And after me and her talking about if she's ever experienced anything creepy, her saying no, and then all of a sudden this thing's pretending to be her. So anyway, I hang up the phone. About 15 minutes later, nature goes silent. Bearing in mind, it's now 5:15 in the morning. It's not supposed to go silent. They didn't die down. It instantly went from birds chirping to complete silence. And if you know anything about anything spiritual, if nature goes quiet, girl, you need to fucking run. Okay, because when nature stops, that means that they know something's there. So I was shitting bricks. And just as it went dead silent, I heard a creak. I heard a footstep and a creak right outside my bedroom door. I was like, what? I'm sorry, I shot up. It was bright outside because, again, 5 in the morning, and I was shitting bricks. I couldn't sleep. My TV was off. I didn't know what to do. I was like, what the fuck? And again, I lay back down. I tried to ignore it, just go to sleep. You know what I mean? If you're asleep, you're not going to see it. When out of nowhere, I heard my handle to my bedroom door push open, but not open, if that makes sense. Like, my door didn't open. It literally just pushed itself forward the tiniest bit, but it was still on the latch. And again, my handle went down for that. I didn't see anything then. I didn't hear anything. I literally just passed out and went to sleep. And yeah, since then I've not heard anything. I've not seen anything. I have no idea what it was. Obviously my friend wasn't over here, and she proved that because she was on FaceTime to me after it, and it was just terrifying. Like, I have no idea what this is. Each and every time I post a video, it goes completely quiet from it, and then it gets 10 times worse. I know you're probably thinking, then why are you posting this then, girl? Because somebody needs to tell me what this is, okay? So if you know what it is, you can debunk this in any way and make me feel better, please let me know. I love you. Thanks for watching. Bye.